Welcome to the Month End CPG Community Chat. The Month End will provide emerging CPG brands real-life knowledge into the accounting, finance, and operational worlds. Our guests will be key stakeholders from those same brands, as well as other key contributors to the industry. Welcome to the Month End Podcast, episode 32 with Eran Mizrahi from the Ingredient Brothers. How you doing today, Eran?
Hey, Brad. Good. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Doing great. Tuesday afternoon here in Charleston. Summer's here. It's probably 90 outside, so can't complain when the sun's shining.
Yeah, love the weather down there and the food. So I've been once and had a really great time.
Awesome. Glad to hear. So very excited to chat about the Ingredient Brothers, the service you guys provide folks in the CPG space, but also then just your role, your background, and just learnings and experiences along the way that can help the listeners out. So why don't we just get started? What is Ingredient Brothers?
So Ingredient Brothers is a pretty simple concept. I'd say it's classified like an unsexy idea where we're just traditional importers of ingredients, right? And so I think we really saw, Alap and myself, he's my co-founder, we really saw an opportunity in just coming into an industry that let's say is not necessarily antiquated, but hasn't seen as much innovation, and try and do the same thing but do it a little bit better, maybe adopt technology a little differently, and not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but just make it spin a little bit faster.
Gotcha. And then how long have you been in business?
So we've been around for about 2 years now.
Gotcha. Cool. And then, so like, 2021. So, what was your prior experience, before Ingredient Brothers? And then what made you decide to move forward with Ingredient Brothers?
Yeah. So, Alap and myself have very similar backgrounds, which is really interesting. I'd come here from South Africa and then had joined a startup in the meal kit space first, and then a company called nuts.com, where I was the COO there. And I think at both of these experiences got to see sourcing and planning from a variety of different angles. But the thing that always stood out to me was just how difficult sometimes it was to get information when procuring ingredients, and knowing who to call, what's the right questions to ask, how do you know you're getting the right prices, how do you hold people accountable on service. And I think that just opened my eyes and made me get excited, like, oh, there could be something here where you could come in and maybe just try and offer a little bit more transparency, try and give people a little bit more visibility into what you were doing, and there would be a lot of opportunity. So that was really the impetus for the business idea.
Gotcha. And you're purely like a service-based company, right? You're not actually owning the inventory. You're basically making connections and then working with your clients to bring that product into the States.
Correct. Yeah, our whole business is on service. I always say, I think a lot of people can source a great chia seed if they really spend the time. It's all the other things around it that really come into play. And I think that's where we, have invested a lot in people and building a really great team and a really big team. We try and have more people per dollar of revenue than our competition out there. And so it's really about, being able to support people on the logistics side of things, on the QA side of things, on the inventory planning side. So, really giving a robust service around, let's say a commodity like the chia seeds.
Gotcha. Yeah. From my experience from working with a lot of CPG brands, I feel like, the frustrations that can exist from sourcing ingredients, relation to like, is there a consistent supply for me to go from here through the next several years, right? Is the pricing going to fluctuate, or are we going to get a consistent price? And are you guys going to follow through when I need the product? Is it going to land? All that aspect. Can you kind of touch on a couple of those just topics and just kind of the experiences you've seen with folks in the CPG space on those items?
Yeah, I think we see that a lot, right? It's also people in CPG space are usually, especially in the startup world, are using a lot of ingredients. Some of those ingredients, a lot of those are hard to find, and sometimes a little bit niche. And so, some of the challenges I see some people, that they have is that, one, maybe selecting ingredients that like limit the amount of supply that they have, and so that can be challenging where they've got an ingredient that if they don't have supply for, the supplier doesn't have it, like there is no secondary, or it's very difficult to get access to a secondary. I think that suppliers, it's, there is, it's a lot harder to really understand the position that the supplier is in from an inventory perspective and how they operate. And that information is not always easily available, even if you have a great relationship. And so you may place your first order and get a pallet in 2 days, and it's been amazing. And then suddenly you place your second order and you're like, hey, I need another pallet. Can I pick it up in a week? And they're like, oh no, it's on the water. We're not going to have something for another 3 months. And so I think, those challenges I see all the time with CPG brands. And so, there's definitely things that, brands can do to try and at least reduce the risk and think about how they design their supply chain from day one to improve their, let's call it supply and available, the ability to deliver, as well as, trying to identify the right partner for them at the right stage, right? Different partners are the right partners at different stages, depending on how big you are.
Gotcha. The timing of launching this business, in 2021, correlates with COVID in 2020 and supply chain issues. Is that just pure coincidence, or did that kind of help push you over the arm of all right, let's become an entrepreneur and let's roll with Ingredient Brothers?
Yeah, I mean, 2020, like for a lot of people, was a life-changing experience. Being at Nuts, we were faced with so many hurdles, but were able to scale the company quite significantly. It also, just gave me a lot more insight into building and scaling teams at a really fast rate, and building supply at a really fast rate, and trying to, I guess coming out of that working, tremendously hard in 2020, I felt like, oh, 2021 has to be better. And I also it just gave me a lot of perspective internally. And it just felt like, I'd come to the US to start a business, always felt like it was in my DNA. And so we made the move. And the first few conversations I had were with people who do importing, and they were like, why are you starting it now? This is the worst time to start. I was like, okay, well, probably right, but I'm done. So we're starting. And so we had to take the leap, and we definitely got hurt a little bit at the beginning with supply chain issues and the ports being congested. But at this, with adversity, or like this type of volatility in the market, there's always going to be a little bit more opportunity. People are more willing to open up and have a conversation because their current supplier wasn't working for them or wasn't communicating. And so, it was a double-edged sword. It worked in our favor, but also, worked against us to some extent.
Gotcha. So then your current the service you provide, or the relationship you provide your clients, it is a long-term solution, right? Or as it can be project-based, but also like the best solution is probably like long-term, so you can kind of stay some consistent approach with them.
Yeah, I think for us, again, like early on, we realized that we had come in assuming that we'd be working with a lot of smaller businesses. And what happened very quickly was we realized that larger companies actually needed our services, maybe not for, their main ingredients, but for a lot of their, secondary ingredients. And what we've, come in as like build, become a part of their supply chain team or their sourcing team, and really, latch on and understand their whole business, their planning process, their planning cycle, and build a supply chain around that. So we'll come in, we usually start with one ingredient, build out a supply chain for that, have a lot of redundancy built in, then work with them on planning, on QA, and making sure that we can support them. And then over time, as they start to learn how we operate, usually it, allows us to then add more products. And so that's been working really well for us. But, long term, that's, not exactly where we want to go. We will, try and spread out and also take on, let's say smaller startups who have less volume. But at the beginning, that, was really helped us, learn our trade. We had a few really key, we still have a few really key customers who have given us that ability to really, finesse our processes, figure out what we need to do better. And, that will allow us, I think, over time to scale and take on a much larger set of customers.
Gotcha. What is one, as a business owner as well, just looking back in the last couple of years, what is like one big, maybe just like mistake or thing that happened that then helped you improve upon to become a better business owner because you received feedback, you made a mistake, and what did you do in that process?
Yeah, I think, my mind goes to two things. Like first being mistake that I made in terms of just getting too excited over certain customers that I didn't vet them properly, and landed up losing a little bit of money because of the situation, the market turning, and suddenly you have an AR account that doesn't pay. And so that, I definitely think that like that, being able to like, take a step back and always evaluate every opportunity. That was a, big lesson that we had to learn with one or two customers. And then, on the other side, just things are not going to go right all the time with supply chain. I think that is managing problems, and I say it over and over again, is really the key to building a great supply chain, because I think assuming that every delivery is going to arrive and it's going to be perfect is a misnomer. And so that's really a big lesson that we learned at the beginning was, really trying to like, we obviously we do our best to be perfect, but building the process on the back end so that if something goes wrong, what are the things that get initiated to rectify that straight away, right? One, how do we solve the problem within 24 hours to make sure that the customer, feels comfortable that we're taking action? And then two, what are the long-term changes that we can make to improve this process going forward? And so I think those are the two things that, were surprising, but, good lessons.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely feel both of those just in the world that I live in here. In terms of, let's say somebody out there in the street that has no idea how the import process works, how inventory management, buying suppliers, international suppliers. What is just one surprising tidbit or thing that is involved in that maybe may surprise the normal citizen or somebody that has no idea what's going on in this space?
Yeah, I think the thing that would be surprising, and maybe not that surprising, but to me was very surprising, just how many people are involved in getting, one coconut on the shelves. I think that is, mind blowing in terms of how the world is progressing globalization, but just, you have an independent farmer, usually it's not necessarily a big farm, who's then selling it to a broker, who then sells it to the processor, who then processes it, and then it goes onto a truck that's run by someone else to the port, that gets into a boat that comes to us and then gets to the customer. There's just so many hands involved, and I think that, every little reaction or, action causes so many different reactions. And I think that is, it's pretty incredible when you think about it, and like the impact people can have when, not saying, you should all buy, it's not about buying, local versus imported. I don't think that's a decision, but there is like a really incredible story for some of these commodities where, there's small, farmers that are growing, and then, it's being used in processing these large quantities of some products. So that's been really cool to see.
Yeah, that's one thing that kind of opened my eyes, was just like when you buy products at a Whole Foods or a big box, you're like, oh, these must be all big, ingredients and processors and farmers. But no, a lot of them are just like mom and pop farmers that just have a small shop and operation that have grown it, and they sell their ingredient to different products to make a really good end product. Do you guys then deal with sourcing for food as well as like drinks and liquids, everything?
Yeah, I'd say like anything that goes into a food item, we'll source for. So there's, we've definitely done some work in the beverage space in terms of flavorings and maybe some of the sweeteners. And then into, in food, that's, bread and butter in terms of spices and seeds, grains, flours, and the like.
Awesome. So as we discussed before the call here, or before we started recording, that we're fellow Big Four alums, have the accounting background.
Yeah.
So as a business owner here, what is like one thing that, being an accountant and having experience with accounting and finance really helped you, as a business owner?
Yeah, I think the thing that I come back to all the time is it really helped me understand the variables that drive growth within the business and linking that all back to our financials, right? And I think that has been really, really valuable in sizing opportunities quickly and understanding the impact of certain actions that, that we take as a business. And I think that sometimes is a struggle for people who don't necessarily have like the finance background or, that analytical background that relates back to the, finance, because, we're able to, really digest and do back of the envelope calculations to understand like what could this impact be, and then what are the resources we need to allocate against it. I think, from a planning perspective, I'm a big planner, and so for me, having that toolkit has been really, really valuable in helping me plan and understand like how to allocate resources against different opportunities.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, when you have that kind of background, it really helps out just making a decision. I think a big part of that, if you don't have that background, is just you need to know where you're at currently, right?
Yeah.
A lot of small business owners don't even know where they're at in terms of
Yeah.
what is my profitability, what is my balance sheet like, where I'm at on receivables, payables. So a big aspect is just having a good aspect and a foundation of timely and accurate data to then build decisions and make assumptions and
Oh yeah.
start.
I think it's, that to some extent can really hurt the growth of a company. And what, something that, I was reading on your side, what you guys do, and it's, being able to have accurate financial information is extremely important, but it also unlocks a tremendous amount of tools that you could use to, accelerate growth, that it may not only be equity, right? And giving up equity to raise money. I think that that's something that if you're able to put in the discipline from day one in terms of your financials and your financial performance, as well as your planning, you're able to then go out and potentially get debt at still expensive debt because you're a startup, but debt that doesn't liquidate some of your equity, and then and gives you the chance to really take the money that you've raised a lot further. And I think that's something that I see a lot of people not necessarily being able to take advantage of because of the state of their financials or their understanding of their financials.
How do you help your clients with their unit economics and just COGS, and helping them minimize COGS and inflate margins as best as possible?
Yeah, I think for us, it's understanding their business and their usage and trying to think about how do we design a supply chain that works for them. And so, some of the things that, we try and, for most of our customers, offer like inventory managed programs where we're, managing their inventory based on their forecast, and then also based on the actual usage to bring in inventory, hold it for them so that they know that it's available, which then also gives them more comfort and allows them to run a little bit leaner on inventory. And then the more data we get, the better we're able to plan. And so we can run not necessarily leaner, but at least, be efficient in our inventory management. And so that, I think, giving that extra level of visibility into, what we have available, what we have on the water, what's coming in, and then show them our plan. I think that allows, them to operate with a lot more confidence. And then it gives us negotiating power. Like if we're able to do an inventory managed program, then we can contract things when they get harvested at the right time. We can work with them up front. We know what they're using, and that gives us negotiating power. Like we're not in this for that short-term profit. Like we're here to build long-term relationships with customers. And like the one thing I know, being on the other side of the table, is that if you don't have good margins, you're not going to scale your business. And so it's great like making good margins, but if you screw the brand, excuse my language, you screw the brand in the short term, like they may not be able to raise that next round. They may not be able to go further. And so I think there is a real balance there that sometimes I think suppliers don't see.
Yeah, and I think a big decision, or a big learning topic that you know brand owners need to understand is cash versus inventory, right? And what is the perfect level of inventory? When is the right time to bring in? What is the right order quantity? What is the lead time? And understanding that um, you know everybody assumes that, oh, if I order more, I'm going to be able to get a couple points down or cheaper, raw materials on my product. But that isn't always a good thing if it's sitting there too long and you spoil it, or you can't sell it, or you have all of your cash outlaid to this inventory that's going to, sit in your inventory or warehouse for 6 months versus reordering. So kind of walking through that process, I'm assuming like, what you're talking about of planning and walking through the supply chain and reordering and reorder points is a big, consultancy you provide your clients as well.
Yeah, I think, coming to our story too, cash is king, right? Our business requires, if you think about our suppliers want to get paid straight away and our customers want crazy terms. And so and containers cost a lot of money. And so cash and cash cycles have become, things that we think about 24 hours a day in running our business and scaling our business. And I think that translates back to the customer, right? And that's again, the best customers are the ones who can give us really good forecasts and can plan with us. The ones, people that struggle, I think that's when, again, we sit down and have that conversation to try and think about, based on the stage that you're at, what is it that we can do to support you? How do we maximize deliveries without going overboard? Like, how do we, reduce the storage costs that you're going to incur by bringing in too much, so that we can do more frequent deliveries depending on what's happening in the market. So it is tough, right? I think that, helping a company make those cash decisions without all the pieces can be really hard. But again, cash in the bank is sometimes better, and you're able to use that to deploy to turn the inventory. And so that is, something that, I think about all the time, right? And how do we balance using cash to fund growth versus funding inventory? Because if you just fund inventory, you never grow. And if you just fund growth, that when the growth comes, you're not going to have any money for inventory. And that is a very scary balancing and modeling exercise that we do all the time at Ingredient Brothers.
Moving over to kind of your business just itself, like how big are you guys now, like number of people?
So we have 20 people currently. I think it's around 20 people now.
Awesome.
Yeah, a good number of people.
And you're the CEO, so like what responsibilities do you have?
So between Alap and myself, he does most of the ops stuff. So he does all the difficult work. He does the logistics, the sourcing, some of the planning, and the QA side of the business. And then I am on the sales side, the accounts, the finance side, and the HR side, people side. So I do the fun stuff. I love hiring people. Enjoy the finance part of it, and sales has been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, what specific, just kind of, measuring maybe like client success or customer success, like what are some KPIs that you guys look at internally for that?
Yes, I think, we look at the funnel, like we're a B2B business, so we're not CPG, and velocity is not like our biggest thing. I think the biggest thing is that deals take a significant amount of time to win. And so, if you think about our funnel, it's a traditional B2B funnel where, you're doing outreach, you're going to shows, you're getting leads, you're, getting those leads in, and you're creating basically a deal or a project that you're working on to close. And those projects can take months. And so a lot of the KPIs that we look at is just how much time we're spending to close a deal, and what does that revenue look like. And then once we're able to close a customer, then, a lot of the KPIs is like how much, can can the account manager actually drive more value with the customer and increase that, revenue, per customer over like a 12-month period by adding more products, by working them to, increase the amount of business we do on certain ingredients. And then so those are like some of the big financial indicators that we look at.
Gotcha. And then from the service you're offering, right, in the current state of what you guys are doing, is there anything new on the horizon for Ingredient Brothers, of services, products, connections, just anything in terms of, where you guys are heading?
Yeah, I think we continue to expand on our technology side, which I think over time will start to expose more to our customers, right? And so the idea is to, some of the deals we close take like 150 emails, and it's not abnormal in the B2B space for that to happen. And so a lot of what we're working on is to try and develop a platform so that customers can self-serve and get access to information. So those are some of the technology that we're trying to build out and implement over time. And then I think food safety is also really important to us. And so one of the big things push internally is we're going to be, we're going for certification with the BRC, which is, highly recognized food certification organization that will at least give people the confidence that our handling of the product is within, the correct food safety requirements. And so I think that's a big step for us as a small importer to take on, but something that we're committed to doing.
What's like the most interesting, just off the top of your head, like product or location that you guys source from, or that you work with?
Oh man, I think working with every there's so many different countries that we work with, and different processes and how they work. And I think, Chia is one that's super interesting. It's a crazy market. It just feels very disorganized, even though it's organized. There's a bunch of big players, but like right now there's the harvest happening. And so I think maybe that's top of mind for me. But if you imagine like something like corn, it's traded on, there's like a market for it, there's information, what's going on. And with chia, there's just a lot of WhatsApp messages happening. Everyone's trying to get understanding of the market, what's going on. There's like pictures of the fields, and everyone's trying to evaluate the weather and how's the harvest going to happen. And I think it's fun to see how, almost old school it is in terms of, and it's a lot, we're not talking small numbers of chia, but it's fun to see how everyone organizes themselves. And to be honest with you, it feels like everyone gets to parity really quickly. And as much as like you think you hold the secret to like this special pricing. Once you start to really work around with everyone, you start to see where everyone's sitting, and it's just natural market dynamics playing out in a very informal way, which is super interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world than what I do in day to day.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, me too.
But I'm sure it's super interesting. All right, we're really enjoyed this chat so far. We're kind of nearing the end here and wrapping up. Wanted to kind of chat on a couple main questions we do as we kind of go out of here. For an emerging CPG brand, owner, listener out there, what is one recommendation or do that they should be handling or doing from your background and experience?
I think I'll take this one as a founder. Like the biggest lesson in terms of do is just every day you're gonna feel like there's like this mountain to climb. And the thing that like really helped me was just realizing that like it's just a few small steps every day. And so at the beginning I got really bogged down by trying to achieve everything and like really, get to the end straight away. And I think the biggest do was just come in every day, make my list, understand the things that I need to push forward. As long as you're pushing forward and your prioritization is correct or like roughly correct, I think you will start to see results, right? I think as soon as you start to find yourself in a situation where you're constantly challenging the priorities of what you should be doing instead of just doing, I think then you're not learning and you're not moving forward, and that can definitely hurt you as a founder.
Yeah, that rings true. Just as the founder of an accounting firm here, and then the next question, just what is one don't to the CPG owners out there?
Don't say yes to everything. I think before you say yes, do a quick analysis of what this could mean for your business and your resource allocation. I think resource allocation planning is no one does it. It's a simple spreadsheet, and be realistic. And I always see it. I see it with myself. I see it with with Alec, my partner, and we always try and say yes to more things than we can do, and that's great in theory, but it doesn't move things forward. And I think that if you take the time to really, you don't need to do a Six Sigma analysis on the thing. It's back to the napkin calculation, but constantly understanding the resources that you have available to you, because it's so important to execute as a startup. And even when you try and execute, you don't execute well a lot of the times. And so if you take on way too much, then it can really hurt you as a business.
Yeah, and I feel like once you start a business in the first, as you're starting, you're like, sure, yes, yes, yes. And after a while, you're like, all right, on the brakes.
Yeah, there was so many deals that we tried to do at the beginning because we just got so excited and we spent so much time, and we just should not have. And I still do. I mean, my team, if you ask them now, they'll probably say like these 5 deals we should never be working on, but Eran wants us to try, and it's I think it's just the nature of the game.
Yeah, and from a resource standpoint, like the way that I'm, looking at it, I want to get your input. I look at it from an aspect of, money, time spent, opportunity cost, people involved, people costs, clearly from the CPG space, inventory, lost sales. Is there any other kind of topics within there that you look at it from the resource, standpoint?
No, I mean, I think that you hit if you can get all of those, then you're already like 5 steps ahead. I mean, for me, it really is just it's people and capital, and really those are the 2 things, and then the return, right?
Yep.
Like and like the probability of success, some like basic probability of success. Those are the big things that I'll look at, and usually the people thing is the one that straight away you're like, okay, well, if I have to do this, I have to say no to something that we're doing, and that makes it a lot easier to make the decision.
Yep. Yep. Well, this was an awesome conversation, Eran. I'm really really happy we connected and had you on the month end podcast here. As we kind of head out, where can people find you? Where can people find Ingredient Brothers? How can they get in touch?
Yeah, I mean, we're incredibly active on LinkedIn, so you can look us up there. We're obviously on ingredientbrothers.com. Love chatting to CPG founders or anyone in the CPG space. Love talking about supply chain and ingredient selection and how to structure your bill of materials. So, if you need help with that, definitely reach out.
Awesome. I'm sure people will reach out. So thanks again, Eran, for being on the podcast here, episode 32 of the month end podcast. Eran Mizrahi from Ingredient Brothers. Hope everyone out there was listening and enjoyed. Take care.
Thanks so much, Brad. Have a good one.